so much to discuss on the international stage. Of course, this week, Ukraine fired into Russia for the first time using UK-supplied missiles. And today, the Russian ambassador has told Sky News that Britain is now directly involved in the war. I mean, are we directly involved?
Russia has been trying to extend this war for years. Don't forget, only a few years ago, they threatened a nuclear strike on Denmark, of all countries. This is not the first time Russia does this. It does it the whole time. It's what bullies do when they try and get out of the mess they've caused themselves, and that's what Putin's doing now. I'm afraid I don't listen to the Russian ambassador anymore. He just lies the whole time, and it's completely irrelevant what he says anyway, because he's not listened to in Moscow, and he's completely irrelevant in the United Kingdom. So what we've got to focus on is how do we keep Ukrainians safe? How do we make sure Russia's evil aggression doesn't continue any further? And that's why I think it is perfectly reasonable for Ukraine to use the weapons that it has at its disposal to strike those areas from which it is itself being struck. Why should Russia be able to mount attacks on Ukraine in safety when the women and children and innocent civilians of Ukraine are being murdered in these attacks? Of course Ukraine should have the right to strike back. Of course the Ukrainians are right to have the capability to respond.
So you're comfortable then with the use of these UK-supplied missiles? You think it's the right thing to do? And what do you think it should have happened sooner, I guess?
Look, I think it should have happened sooner. I think that the Ukrainians should have the capability to defend themselves. I think it's deeply immoral that a country like Russia is able to assemble the weaponry, the artillery, the ammunitions, the people to attack Ukraine. And Ukraine can only strike back when they've entered Ukrainian territory. Why is that right? It isn't, and they should be able to defend themselves. Are
you concerned about what a Donald Trump presidency means for the war, and by extension, what you're just talking there about Western democracy? Because, you know, he said in the campaign, didn't he, that he could end the war in 24 hours. Lots of people say, or effectively believe, that what that means is appeasing Russia, giving in some of their demands, forcing Ukraine to make a compromise.
Well, Sophie, we were in a similar position about 8 years ago, and the trouble we have with Donald Trump is, I don't know, and nobody does. Nobody can quite predict what's going to happen. I think it's possible that you're right. It's possible that it's concerning. It's also possible that what he seeks to do is return the position to where it was when he left office in 2020. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know which one of those he's going to do. I am reassured by the fact that he's nominated Marco Rubio, the Florida senator, to be the Secretary of State. He's always demonstrated a capability to stand up against dictatorships, whether in China or Russia. I'm reassured that he's appointed Mike Waltz, or nominated Mike Waltz, to be his national security advisor. He's a great Florida congressman and has been a really impressive champion of standing up for democracy. So, you know, I'm reassured by those two names. We'll have to see what happens. But, you know, we really can't simply leave this to the United States. It simply cannot be right that the defence of Europe is based on the opinion of a few people so far away. It needs to be based on our own capabilities, our own spending, our own preparations. And as I said before, Russia is already conducting operations against us here in Europe. They're already setting fire to factories, to sites here in the UK and around Europe. They're already trying to murder people here.
Talking about the defence capability that you mentioned there and defence spending, we of course saw John Healey, the Defence Secretary, set out £500 million worth of savings, cuts, I guess, depending on your perspective. Some people say this is absolutely the wrong thing to do, the wrong message to send, given the global threats we face. Others say, look, this is retiring a bit of outdated kit, freeing a bit of headspace up elsewhere. What's your own view on that?
Well, he saved £9 million by getting rid of Albion, which is one of the LPDs, the Langdon Craft carriers. Now, you know, that's a hell of a saving. You cannot launch an amphibious landing without them.
So what do you mean? Just explain to me.
Well, that means that you can't launch a Command Overall Marines onto a beach without these ships.
So it was a mistake, you think, then?
Well, you're really removing a capability from defence. I think the biggest mistake, frankly, is that, and, you know, I own part of this myself, is that over the last 10 years, those of us in Parliament have not made the case successfully enough for the investment in defence that we need to see. Now, I've been calling for 3%, as you know, for the last, whatever it is now, 4 or 5 years.
So it's on the Conservatives as well. You think it was on the last administration too?
I'm not trying to make a partisan point here, Sophie. Frankly, we have needed to spend more on defence for a very long time. I've been calling for it for 3 or 4 years. I was calling for it in government as well. I didn't win, right? I mean, I didn't win the argument, but it's only becoming more important. I was just in Estonia, and they are incredibly grateful, incredibly proud to have a British brigade there in Tapa alongside them and ready to defend, ready to stand up against Russian aggression. But let's not pretend that one brigade is enough. What we're seeing in Russia is quite literally hundreds of brigades on each side. We're seeing brigades fighting on the Ukrainian side being effectively knocked out of action within weeks or months. It doesn't mean everybody in them has been killed, but effectively the entity has been so knocked back that it needs to be reformed and then brought back into the fight. We're seeing a huge amount of need for manpower, and yet at the same time we're cutting back.
You have spoken a lot about the threat from China as well over the years, and of course we've seen recently Keir Starmer make the decision to meet with the Chinese president, first time I think a UK Prime Minister has done so in 6 years. Look, he says he needs a pragmatic relationship with China. Do you buy that argument that, look, they're an important trading partner, they're an important player on the global stage, we need to be pragmatic about it?
Look, I agree that we need to have a relationship with China. The question is, at what level and how do you have that relationship? Do you do, as Keir Starmer just did in Rio at the G20, do you have a meeting where you allow the Chinese dictator to kick out the journalists during the element when it's supposed to be on the record? Is that what you allow? Do you tolerate that sort of behaviour? Or do you stand up for your values and say, no, we believe in freedom, we believe in freedom of speech, and we believe in journalistic challenge, even when sometimes it's not very pleasant? Is that what we stand up for, or don't we? And what's needed is the defence of British values and the defence of the British people.
You were alarmed by this boat interception as well. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Well, this is the Danish Navy, according to reports, has intercepted a Chinese vessel crewed by a Russian captain and possibly also a Russian crew that is accused of having cut cables, undersea cables that connect us, the internet traffic and all the sort of cables that connect this world together. And it's worth remembering that China isn't just another country. It's a fundamental partner in Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, a fundamental partner in Russia's aim at destabilising the West. And
they say they're neutral in this, right?
It's complete rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. For a country that champions its own sovereignty and always says that, you mustn't have foreign interference, this is a country that continuously interferes in the lives of others abroad, not just in Ukraine, but actually here in the United Kingdom. We know of Hong Kongers, British nationals, here in the United Kingdom, whose lives have been made a misery by Chinese state agents who've hassled them here in the United Kingdom. It's got to stop.
We've explored a huge amount in foreign affairs and the international situation. I think we could talk about it for a long time. There is one other thing that I did want to get your view on as well, because we've heard today that the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for the leader of Hamas, but also for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you agree with that arrest warrant?
I think what the International Criminal Court is trying to do is to sound balanced. But it's complete rubbish that there is a balance. One is a terrorist organisation that's specific charter, its actual constitution, says that its purpose is to kill every Jew. That's its purpose. The other is the democratically elected head of a state. Now, you may not like his policies. There's plenty that I can criticise about his policies. But the idea that there is an equality is complete rubbish.
Some say that he's committed war crimes, right? Well, that's what it's about, isn't it? Israel
is the only state in the Middle East where the head of state has gone to prison because of a judgment found by their own High Court. It so happens that the High Court, the president of that High Court, was an Arab judge sitting over a Jewish president. This is a state that has its own legal office investigating these matters and consistently has on regular occasions found Israeli politicians guilty of various different crimes and sent them to prison. If the Israeli courts feel that is appropriate, they can proceed with those crimes. The difference is with Hamas, its specific purpose is the murder of Jews.
You've got an awful lot to say on foreign affairs. It's very clear. Just to finish, did you decline to serve in Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet? What went on there?
Well, Kemi's a really, really good friend. She has been for many years. She very kindly asked me if I was looking for a role, and I said, look, if you wouldn't mind very much, I'd like to have a little bit of time to think and to do a few other things and come back to serve in due course. She's already started extremely well. She's going to make a great leader of the opposition. She's already started on that journey. And in about 4.5 years' time, she's going to make a great Prime Minister.
OK, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.